What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We have Jose Ramirez, 26 wins and 1 loss, taking on Jose Pedraza, 29 wins and 3 losses. Jose Ramirez is the former WBC and WBO light welterweight champion. Jose Pedraza is a former IBF super featherweight, that's 130-pound champion. He lost that title to Gervonta Tank Davis back in 2017, which is still to this date one of Gervonta Davis's best wins. I should also add that Jose Pedraza is actually a 2-division champion. He was that 130-pound IBF title holder, and he was also a WBO lightweight 135-pound title holder after he beat Ray Beltran, and then he had lost that belt in a title unification match against Vasiliy Lomachenko. This was in 2018. So Pedraza is actually a 2-division belt holder. You know, I'm going to start trying to distinguish some of the naming here. I kind of want to reserve champion for somebody who has either A, had several, title defenses, or maybe somebody who unified 2 belts, because, I mean, technically, if you are holding a belt, you are a champion, even if it's just one of the 4 sanctioning bodies. But I wish there was a way of classifying champions versus a belt holder, because there have been a lot of belt holders who might win a belt from one of these 4 sanctioning bodies, like in a vacant title bout against somebody else who nobody would ever consider as a champion, but you won that fight for a vacant belt, therefore you're technically a champion. But I don't know, there are different degrees of champion here. But yeah, Jose Pedraza is a 2-division, we'll say, belt holder. Jose Ramirez unified 2 of the 4 belts at 140. He had won the WBC belt versus Amir Imam back in 2018. And then 3 fights later, he had fought Maurice Hooker, who was holding the WBO belt. And this ended up being a very entertaining fight. Maurice Hooker started to, he was doing really well in the early rounds, outboxing Jose Ramirez with the long reach. And then he started to find himself kind of backed into the ropes, which is, Jose Ramirez's style. He's a intelligent pressure fighter with a really good jab, but he wants to kind of pin you up against a rope so he could let his devastating power punches go to the body and so forth. Maurice Hooker's corner was begging for him to stay off the ropes, but he would time and time again find himself backed up, and then he was stopped in the 6th round. And so Jose Ramirez walks away from that fight with 2 of the belts. And Jose Ramirez, we know, is trained by Robert Garcia in his famed boxing stable. They used to be located out in Oxnard. Now they're in Riverside, but Robert Garcia is certainly one of the best and most esteemed trainers in the game. And just before that title unification match for Jose Ramirez against Maurice Hooker, he had fought Jose Zepeda. Jose Zepeda is actually a common opponent between both Jose Ramirez and Jose Pedraza. They've both fought against Zepeda, and they both had some big-time struggles with Zepeda. Zepeda is currently like the number 3 ranked contender at 140 by Ring Magazine. Jose Ramirez is the number 2 ranked contender behind only Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis. So Jose Ramirez is the number 2 ranked contender, and then Jose Pedraza is actually the number 8 ranked contender by Ring Magazine. So in this, fight between Ramirez and Pedraza, again, 2 former champions, but it's also basically the number 2 ranked contender versus the number 8 ranked contender. And Jose Pedraza, that currently number 3 ranked contender, has fought both of these guys. And with Ramirez versus Zepeda, to a lot of the spectators, it looked like Zepeda should have been rewarded with that win. It was a super close and competitive fight. Jose Ramirez was actually awarded a majority decision win over Zepeda. But again, that one really could have gone either way. That fight was in February of 2019, and then Pedraza's fight against Jose Zepeda was in September of 2019. So basically you had Zepeda, lose a super close, razor close decision against Jose Ramirez, and then he had a no contest fight like 3 months later against Eleazar Valenzuela, and then Zepeda fought Pedraza, and in this fight, Zepeda was actually awarded the unanimous decision win over Jose Pedraza. But Jose Ramirez, after kind of getting that gift decision against Jose Zepeda, then following that up with probably it's a signature win, biggest win to date in that unification fight against Maurice Hooker, then took on Victor Postal, and this was in August of 2020, so right smack in the middle of that, COVID 2020 summer with, no crowds. Jose Ramirez kind of has he gets a decision win over Victor Postal, the former 140-pound champ who had stopped Lucas Matisse, and we just saw get stopped for the first time in his career against Gary Antoine Russell, the younger brother of Gary Russell Jr. But Ramirez fought Victor Postal, again, to no crowds, and it was kind of a flat performance from Jose Ramirez, but Victor Postal is one of these guys who's so seasoned and so experienced that he makes a lot of people look flat. A lot of really good fighters don't look great against Victor Postal. Even Josh Taylor, the undisputed champion at 140, which we just saw him fight tooth and nail to get a gift decision over Jack Catterall. I was totally wrong about that one, by the way. I am going to do a, recap of that fight, but man, Josh Taylor had all kinds of problems with Jack Catterall. But several years ago, before he started unifying all the titles in that World Boxing Super Series, Josh Taylor fought Victor Postal, super competitive fight. Josh Taylor was awarded the close decision win over Postal, as was Jose Ramirez when he fought Victor Postal. Close majority decision win for Jose Ramirez. He had a lot of difficulty in that one. And then the next fight was the battle for undisputed. All 4 belts on the line. Jose Ramirez came in with the WBC and WBO titles. Josh Taylor came in with the IBF and WBA titles. And Josh Taylor won a unanimous decision over Jose Ramirez. It was a very scintillating fight. Very entertaining, good fight. Back and forth. Some rounds went to Jose Ramirez. Some rounds went to Josh Taylor, but the difference in this one was really the 2 knockdowns for Josh Taylor. And one of them happened in the clinch, where it looked from certain angles like the ref was trying to break them up, but only tapped one of the 2 guys on the back saying break it up, and it was like he tapped Jose Ramirez, but it was questionable whether he signaled equally to both fighters to break. So basically you had Josh Taylor kind of capitalizing on that, protect yourself at all times, and since the ref didn't explicitly jump in and break them, Josh Taylor got those couple of punches in, knocked Jose Ramirez on his back, and that was one of 2 knockdowns in that fight for Josh Taylor. Again, it ended up being a close unanimous decision win, but I really think that those 2 knockdowns were the difference for Josh Taylor. Very good fight and very tough loss if you're Jose Ramirez, because you're really shooting for the sky. The stakes were so high in Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. Ramirez ends up on the losing end of that, walks away from that fight with none of the 4 belts, came in with 2 of them. And so this is his first fight back, and it's against Jose Pedraza. He hasn't had too much inactivity for having such a difficult loss. 10 months, you ideally want to get in the ring before that long, but I've seen a lot worse after very tough decision or knockout stoppage losses. So he's coming in after 10 months of inactivity to fight Jose Pedraza, who, as I mentioned, 2 division champion. His losses came against Gervonta Davis via stoppage, knockout in the 7th round. And then 4 fights later versus Vasiliy Lomachenko. This ended up being a unanimous decision win for Lomachenko. This is when Lomachenko, as he has in different periods of the later stages of his career, was battling a shoulder injury and surgery. He had surgery after this fight. He also has shoulder issues in his fight against, as he says, Teofimo Lopez, as well as the fight against Jorge Linares. But Lomachenko didn't look his absolute best against Pedraza, but I think that Pedraza's style gave Lomachenko some issues. It's funny, a lot of people will cite their injuries in fights where they don't look great, but the matchups in those fights that they don't look great, you also have to credit that opponent for making them look less than great. And I think that that's what we got with Pedraza, or Lomachenko versus Pedraza. Pedraza's a very skilled fighter. He switches stances a lot. He fights a lot of his fights primarily in southpaw, like he did in his decision loss against Jose Zepeda, a fellow southpaw. So again, I had mentioned Jose Zepeda being a common opponent between Ramirez and Pedraza. Zepeda, you could argue, should have gotten the decision win over both of these guys, but he was only given the decision win over Pedraza. And in that fight, he did win that one, to my eyes, more authoritatively. That was an easier one to call. I thought that Zepeda won by at least a couple rounds against Pedraza, but it was like Zepeda was quicker with the jab. Like he was crouching lower. They're both about 5'8", 5'8.5", but Zepeda was crouching low and kind of had like an up jab going for him. And for as sweet sciencey as Jose Pedraza is, Zepeda, you could argue, was even more sweet sciencey, even though he had that fight of the year trading knockdowns against Ivan Baranchyk. Great fight. If you want to look for just an all-out entertaining fight, one of those I can't believe what I'm watching types of fights, go ahead and revisit Ivan Baranchyk versus Jose Zepeda, but Jose Zepeda won that one via knockout. Here, Zepeda was pretty much just beating Pedraza to the punch and was just looking a lot sharper with his combinations. Now, granted, after Pedraza lost to Lomachenko at lightweight 135, he then went to 140. So this is one of his first couple of fights at 140 against Jose Zepeda. So you could argue that Jose Pedraza was still getting acclimated to the new weight class. And again, he loses this one against Zepeda. That's his third loss. So again, his 3 losses came against Tank Davis, Lomachenko, Jose Zepeda. That's 3 very good fighters right there. And he has fought and won 3 times since. Pedraza beat Mikel Slick Mick LePierre in the battle of back foot fighters who only punch when being punched at. Although Pedraza was slightly the aggressor in that fight against LePierre, he won that one via unanimous decision. And then he fought Javier Molina and Julian Rodriguez. 2, lesser tiered fighters, but good fighters if you're kind of getting your beak wet and trying to getting acclimated into that weight class. So now Pedraza's been at 140 for several fights. He has one knockout against Antonio Lozada Jr. That was a 9th round TKO. But aside from that stoppage over Lozada right after the Lomachenko, the loss to Lomachenko, so now we're talking May 2019 when Pedraza stopped Lozada, you'd have to go all the way back to 2014 to find another instance of Jose Pedraza stopping somebody. So all of his wins, like his last 10 wins, have all come, except for that Lozada fight, have come via decision. So he's not packing a devastating punch here, even though you watch his fights and he is landing pretty cleanly and crisply. He just doesn't have that detach you from your senses and basically change the fight on a drop of a dime with your power type of power or anything near that. So in Jose Ramirez versus Jose Pedraza, Ramirez is going to be the power puncher here. He's going to be the guy looking to kind of walk Pedraza down. But I think that he's going to be having difficulty given Pedraza's boxing ability. I think that Pedraza is going to win some of the rounds here. And it's going to be a case of, can Jose Ramirez get Pedraza to slow down and to start to wilt to where he starts putting a beating on Pedraza, starts, kind of shortening the distance, starts catching him with some of those body punches, slowing down the movement, slowing down the punch output from Jose Pedraza to where he's not snapping his jab as readily, isn't switching stances on a whim, isn't getting his straight left hands to land on Jose Ramirez's chin. We'll see if Jose Ramirez is able to kind of impose his pressure style and start getting Jose Pedraza to weaken to where it becomes a question of how much punishment is Pedraza willing to take and how much can he hang with Jose Ramirez in the trenches. I kind of think that Jose Ramirez is going to have to really battle it out and walk through a lot of punches. I think that Pedraza is going to find Ramirez somewhat not easy to hit, but I think that he's going to be hitting him, and I think that the first few rounds are going to be pretty competitive to where it's a question of who do you give this one to? Who do you give that one to? I think we're going to get a bit of that through the first 4 or 5 rounds. I think that by rounds 6, maybe even a little bit before that, but certainly by 6 and 7, I expect Jose Ramirez to start to turn things around, start to have some of those investments to the body pay off in the middle to late rounds to where I think that, Ramirez might come off a little bit rusty here. Again, that fight against Josh Taylor was a super emotional fight, super impactful fight. It didn't go Ramirez's way. So I think that he's going to, want to get some rounds under him. The thing is, this isn't a tune-up fight type of opponent. No, Jose Pedraza will beat you if you're not ready to fight at your absolute best. So I think that Jose Ramirez might get off to kind of a rough start against Pedraza, but I think that his sustained pressure will start to pay dividends in the middle rounds to where he'll start banking some of those middle to late rounds, probably take over on the scorecards by the 8th and 9th round, and then it becomes a question of, is the ref or the corner or somebody going to be stopping the fight if it starts getting out of hand? If Pedraza, Pedraza wears a lot of his punishment on his face. He bruises somewhat easily. And so that can influence judges. It can influence the ref when he's looking in at the damage being sustained. Not that you need a lot of reason to stop a fight if Jose Ramirez is starting to land at will, because Jose Ramirez is a very hard puncher. Yes, he did beat Antonio Orozco and Amir Imam via decision, but he gets a lot of his wins via knockout as well. 17 out of his 26 wins have come via knockout, whereas only 14 of Jose Pedraza's 29 wins have come via knockout. And again, most of those knockouts came early in Pedraza's career. Pedraza is now 32 years old. Ramirez is now 29 years old. So, there's a slight youth advantage for Ramirez here. Pedraza's been in a lot of tough fights. I don't know if he's as crisp and as fleet of foot and as elusive as he used to be, around the time he was fighting Tank Davis and, Ray Beltran when he won that lightweight WBO title. I don't know if we're getting the same Pedraza. And again, I don't think Pedraza's he was already not a devastating puncher. I think he's even more of a kind of, I don't want to say slap you because I feel like that's almost a disrespectful term, but, just an accumulation type of snappy puncher, but not a knock you down, knock you out type of puncher at 140. So I do think that he's going to hit hard enough to get Jose Ramirez's respect. I just think that Jose Ramirez is built in a way where he's got the fortitude to walk through some of that to get to Pedraza. When Pedraza fought Jose Zepeda, again, Jose Zepeda is closer to 5'8". Jose Ramirez is 5'10". So that height can work for you or against you. Gervonta Davis is more like 5'5", 5'6". So Pedraza had trouble with Davis, who was crouching low, exploding up. Same thing with Jose Zepeda. Stay low, jab upward. Vasiliy Lomachenko is about 5'7"-ish. So the same thing. He keeps kind of a lower crouch, and he's able to kind of punch upward at the 5'8"-ish Jose Pedraza. Pedraza is going to be the one jabbing upward against Jose Ramirez. But again, I think that Jose Ramirez is going to eventually walk Jose Pedraza down. But I don't think that he's going to get the stoppage here. I think that Pedraza is going to get beaten up a bit, but I think that he's got the fortitude to go the 12-round distance. I think that, it's going to be kind of interesting because I expect Pedraza to win at least like 3 of the first 6 rounds. So if it's even competitive after the 6th round, then going into the scorecards, unless Jose Ramirez drops Pedraza 1 or 2 times, we might get like a majority decision win for Jose Ramirez or like a split decision win. But I'm going to go with a close but still unanimous decision win for Jose Ramirez. I do expect this to be a competitive fight, but I don't think that there's going to be a ton of controversy. I don't think it's going to be like a robbery where most of the people thought Jose Pedraza won the fight. But I do think that it's going to be more competitive than a lot of people who, just saw Jose Ramirez fighting for all 4 belts and have seen Jose Pedraza lose to Zepeda, Lomachenko, and Tank Davis and kind of write him off as a non-elite but maybe near-elite fighter. Therefore, they probably think that Jose Ramirez is going to beat Pedraza pretty convincingly. But, to be honest, I think that this fight is pretty mispriced odds-wise. Like, Jose Ramirez is like a 6-1 favorite, whereas you could get Pedraza at like a -400, -450, plus 400, plus 425, 450. Basically, they are making Pedraza like a 4-1 underdog, and I don't see that to be the case, especially because of his, his switching stances, his sweet science boxing ability, and the fact that we saw Ramirez potentially lose a Pedraza fight to Jose Zepeda. Again, I have to favor Jose Ramirez here, and I am picking him via unanimous decision, but I don't think that Ramirez should be a 6-1 favorite and Pedraza like a 4-1 underdog. I think that the scorecards are going to reflect a much closer fight, and I think that what we see with our eyes is going to reflect a more hotly disputed contest between the two. But yeah, I'm going Jose Ramirez, the former 2-belt champion at 140, via unanimous decision in a close but somewhat clear decision win over Jose Pedraza. But yeah, let me know what you think about this one in the comments, and what would you like to see materialize after this Ramirez versus Pedraza fight, especially given what we just saw with Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. Also, Regis Prograis still in the mix but can't get any of the fights that matter. You know, I would love to see Jose Ramirez. If he could get by Jose Pedraza, I would love to see Prograis versus Ramirez. But yeah, let me know what you think about this one in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.